You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Welcome in. We're just talking a little college football before we get into the show here. If you hadn't heard, Devonta Smith just won the Heisman, and Nick and I are both in agreement that he was the most deserving. So just a heads up there, because that just was announced here like a minute or two ago.
Yep, deserving. So. What a year. He's such a weird player. You definitely draft players based on their athletic potential, their traits. And Devonta Smith does not look like a dominant player, but you just put on the tape by him, and it's kind of Antonio Brown-esque where he didn't have the best metrics, not the biggest guy, but dude just gets open. So It'll be really interesting to see what he does. He could be the first wide receiver taken. He could be the third. Somebody might prefer Jamar Chase / Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's got that kind of Tyreek Hill explosiveness, and Chase is as strong as I can remember at the point of catch point. So congrats to Devonta Smith. We'll get to the Broncos stuff here, but your news, your current Heisman, and going to be playing a week from yesterday in the College National Football Championship game against the Ohio State Buckeyes. So pretty fun.
That'll be a good one. I'm excited for that. Good to see the top two picks of the draft in that game. We will see. But all right, before we get to all that, I just want to let. Oh shoot! Sorry. Yes,
that was last week.
Yes, Mac Jones. Never mind. Okay, my bad. I'm caught up. I'm there today now. But hey, I just want to welcome everyone into to our podcast here with Building the Broncos. I'm Carl Dumler. This is Nick Kendell, of course, and we're very excited. There's so much Bronco news going on. Some big names for the GM position for the Broncos. The Broncos like to surprise everyone every year with something big. They like to be in the headlines, and well, John Elway did it one last time. So I'm excited to talk about that with you guys. Yes, Rich, it is Tuesday. You're right. I'm getting there. But I want to let everyone also know that our live stream podcast is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Broncos Country, gambling is now legal in the state of Colorado. And if you're looking to make watching your favorite sports a little more interesting, like the college championship coming up, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer destination. Here's why. They have sharp odds and low juice. They have in-house bookmakers. They're not a third-party provider of odds. They have reduced juice, best prices, hassle-free bonuses. Means the bonus money is yours after you bet it one time. Other sites, sometimes it's up to 5 to 30 different times you have to make bets. They also have 24/7 live customer service, always a real person in the U.S. And here's the kicker. Right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will match it up to $750. That's $750 in free bet credits. Plus, right now, with the NBA season getting ready or has tipped off, you'll also get $25 in free bet credits for that. So head on over to sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. That's sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle and capitalize on up to $750 in free bet credits and start 2021 off on the right foot. Also, make sure that you are following us on Twitter. You can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH, and you can find me at Carl Dumler MHH. And if you're joining us today via YouTube, do us a huge favor and like, subscribe, and share our show. Also that on Facebook, if you can, just give us that little thumbs up. And also don't miss out on all of our great in-season content at milehighhuddle.com, an affiliate of the Sports Illustrated, part of the Maven Coalition, brought to you by Overtime Media.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Guys, we got lots of information coming out. It's coming. We had one just released here, 2-3 minutes ago?
Yep.
For the Broncos?
Ian Rappaport had some news coming up here with the Broncos looking at a former Viking. So we have Buana's going to pull up the Ian Rappaport one here in a second. Oh, that's the Adam Schefter one.
Adam Schefter. Yep, there we go.
Oh, it's okay.
We can do Adam Schefter. He's good too.
He's pulling up the Ian Rappaport. Here it comes.
Oh, he's so
down
nice
the tracks. Yes, I know. But thank you, Buana. John, also follow John on Twitter. We should put that in the intro at JohnKMHH. But we got Ian Rappaport coming in here with a tweet at 4:41 That was my time, Pacific time. The Broncos are off and running in their search for a new general manager, sending in a request to interview George Patton, Vikings assistant general manager and VP of player personnel. Source said he is the third known name for the Denver search, joining Champ Kelly and Dave Ziegler. So those are two names that we obviously know of. We're going to get to those a little bit. But first, George Patton, he's been with the Vikings for a bit. I know that Stefanski with Cleveland asked if the Cleveland Browns could also bring over George Patton. Is that a name of a general? You history buffs out there have to come at me. I think that was a famous general.
Yes, General George Patton, but he's got 2 T's instead of 1.
Okay.
I messed that up on Google already this week.
All right. Was he the one that was famous for the island hopping?
I think
on
so,
the Japan front. Okay. Anyway, we're totally nerds here, guys. Football nerds, history nerds, whatever. But yeah, no, definitely he's one that's been a hot name. Actually, I think the Browns requested to interview him and they were declined. So there's a strong chance that the Broncos will be declined to interview him, which is unfortunate because it would be a step up for him, both probably financially and reputation and responsibility. But there's a chance the Broncos won't get to interview him. But everything I've heard is that he's a pretty good general manager. Obviously, or a good person in player personnel. Obviously, I don't know. Did you see the video of the Vikings front office sitting there in their Zoom meeting and sitting with the Eagles picking Jalen Reagor, and they're just celebrating because they knew they were going to get Justin Jefferson?
Yep. I did see that they were laughing because, just they didn't see there was any way that anybody could have Reagor ahead of Jefferson. And obviously that's worked out well for the Vikings. Jefferson has had an outstanding rookie season. Probably the best rookie season of the wide receiver class so far. Doesn't mean he's going to end up being the best wide receiver, just that he had the best rookie season.
Yeah, wide receiver is definitely a quarterback dependent position. So obviously Kirk Cousins is not an incredible quarterback, but he is competent and he's a timing quarterback. So somebody like Justin Jefferson definitely helps out somebody like Kirk Cousins definitely helps out Justin Jefferson. So we got Bwana. Now we also have the Lance Ziegler information that from Adam Schefter from the Patriots. Lance was a former teammate of Josh McDaniels, which I know will make everybody a little bit nervous. But still, he's a guy who has some skins on the wall. People know Dave Ziegler in the league, and he was the Patriots assistant director of player personnel. Obviously, Bill Belichick is the alpha and omega when it comes to coaching and the general manager responsibilities for the Patriots. I will say, if you look at the Patriots draft history, they have had a big amount of misses, but still, he's a guy who has developed and found good players to fit. So it's just issues with their first round pick. I mean, Nick N'Keal Harry, Sony Michel, not great.
Right. And I'd say they draft for what they think are guys that fit their system and their way of doing things. And that doesn't always mean that they're picking the most talented players. They're picking guys that they think are going to fit well within their culture. And there's something to that, but at the same time, I would say they've had a lot more misses than hits, especially as of late. And I mean, that's why you're seeing them be such a depleted team the last couple of years. I mean, Tom Brady goes to Tampa Bay. Now he's throwing for 40 touchdowns and looking like he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in football again. So you get that guy with some talent around him. He's starting to really put himself out there again. But I'm always hesitant of anyone coming from the Patriots. If they let anybody go, it's always hard for me to be okay with that. Now, I do know like Nick Caserio is one of those guys that they have not let go, that others have requested to. So he's one guy that I wouldn't mind. I don't know a whole lot about Ziegler, but again, if they're willing to let him go, it just makes me nervous with the Patriots.
Yeah, I'd be really curious if, looking down the line, let's say they do hire Ziegler and Vic Fangio doesn't work out and they fire him. Would McDaniels get an interview in Denver? I mean, they're very connected. They've worked together, and McDaniels and him played at not only in the same organization now, but the same college team. So I would be really curious to see. I mean, I don't think it could happen, but man, that is an interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. But and then of course the other guy that everybody knows his name, it seems like over the last couple of days, Champ Kelly is the other guy from the Bears who has worked with Vic Fangio, building up their great defense, and also obviously with the Broncos before that, building up their great defense and their great offense as well when he was here. So there's some interesting names out there, guys that have never been just GMs and not just the top guy making the decisions. They're kind of the guys that make recommendations to the top guys. So there is something to that's kind of like the step from coordinator to coach, the head coach. Are they ready to make that kind of step?
I mean, that's kind of the reality of the Broncos situation right now. You see a lot of NFL beat writers kind of ranking the general manager openings around the league. And, we're very close to the situation. I would say that this Broncos situation isn't the worst, but a lot of people are ranking them as actually one of the less opportunistic general managing spots, one that you'd want least. I mean, probably part of that has to do with the instability, the unknown at the ownership position. What are you going to be dealing with in terms of finances? How are you going to be limited financially because of the ownership situation and just the unknown there? So that's a huge situation. You don't want to be hiring somebody who's making a lot of decisions when there could be a lot of flux in the near future at the very top. So that makes this position a little bit less stable, probably a little bit less of a want for many general managers out there. And also you're in a division where you're probably already behind the 8 ball, because when a new general manager comes in, they got 2 questions they got to ask. Do I have the head coach that I want? Do I have the quarterback that I want? And right now, who knows for the new general manager coming in, it'll differ on the guy. I'm sure that'll be part of the interview process. The other question is, what does the landscape of that division look like? And you have Justin Herbert, which, he didn't have 2 great games against the Broncos, but he's setting records for a reason. I mean, if you did a redraft right now of that entire draft class and you told me the Bengals didn't take Herbert 1 overall, or the Washington football team taking Herbert 2 overall, I'd question you, just because the quarterback position is that valuable. And also Patrick Mahomes. So, I mean, it's a tough spot. I do think that this isn't a complete tear down rebuild. There are things here that are going for the Broncos long term, but you might not get the cream of the crop. And that is unfortunate from the Broncos perspective. Right.
All right. Well, I did want to get to some of our super chats because they've been coming in here. Yeah. And I want to make sure that we don't miss anybody as we get going through this. Let me see. Yeah, we got Mohammed Badri coming in here. How's it going? It is going great. Love the hat. Love the hoodie. And it's a great Tuesday. It's exciting times ahead for the Broncos that maybe get some new blood, some new ideas. And, it just, to me, I felt like I kind of knew the direction the Broncos were going this offseason until yesterday. And now all of a sudden everything's on the table.
Yep.
And so it's kind of an exciting time just to see where things are going to go, what kind of general manager they want to bring in. And I don't know. We'll see where things go. But Kenneth Booker coming in here with the super chat. Really appreciate that. And love the double 30. Man, that looks nice. What would you be willing to trade for Darnold? 3rd or a 4th and 7th? It would be a nice competition for Locke and ripping back to the practice squad.
I think on the open market, I think Darnold would be able to fetch a late 2. And he has not played great so far, but you still have the 3rd overall pedigree. He is a year younger than Drew Lock, despite being in the league a year longer. And you have the recent history of guys moving on from Adam Gase and all of a sudden looking like top 10 quarterbacks. Yep. So there is plenty there for Darnold. I think that he's probably closer to an average starter. He doesn't have an absolute cannon. He has solid athleticism, but he's not like traitsy. But still, I think somebody would probably, he's not out there like Josh Allen, but still, I think somebody would probably give up a late 2nd on him. I could see a team like, honestly, if you were the Colts, would you rather have Darnold or Phillip Rivers right now?
Darnold? I mean, you know how much I love Darnold, so that's kind of an unfair question. But you're right. I mean, at that point, it's worth the risk.
Yeah,
you might be getting a guy that, like I said, he could turn into the next Tannehill that becomes a great player that just needs to get his head in the right place and get a team that knows what they're doing. I still can't believe Nick Saban is thinking about bringing Adam Gase in as his offensive coordinator.
I mean, he's done great things with many different cast-off. I mean, Steve Sarkisian was run off from USC after doing horrible there, and now he's the head coach of Texas, and Lane Kiffin before that. So if I was a head coach that was fired and Nick Saban said, hey, come call my offense, God, please, he's a kingmaker for that.
Well, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that wouldn't be my first call just because Adam Gase's personality seems like a very tough one to get along with, and especially going from head coach of an NFL team to all of a sudden offensive coordinator of a college team. that's kind of a pretty decent step down. Yeah. Can Adam Gase handle that kind of humble situation? I don't think he can. But
the thing with Adam Gase for me is I think he's not the best in the interpersonal side of the coaching job. But if it was just pure X's and O football, especially on the college side of things, I think he could be successful there. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, if you have weapons like Waddle, Smith, Judy, and Ruggs, you're going to look good. Even against SEC defenses, you're going to make it. You're going to look smart. So we got a coming in. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would just call go routes and just have Judy running the slant across the middle and then everybody else doing go routes.
4 verts, baby, all day. Happy New Beer from Chris Hernandez. I did not have time to grab myself an adult beverage tonight. Ran down and was talking with Luana before the show. So no adult beverage for me tonight, but I might have one after the podcast is over. But thank you very much, Chris. It's good to see you. Happy New Year. Happy New Beer to you as well. Out of the names so far, are you trading 2 1s to 3 for Wilson or Lance? First off, Paul, I think I might for Wilson. I'm not ready to say yes or no. It would depend. 2 1s and a 3. Or wait, just 2 1s to 3. That's actually probably a good deal. All in all, it depends on how much you like Locke or how much you like Wilson. But there's some talk that Wilson might be quarterback 2, and it might be Fields or Lance that you're talking about there for 3. So that second quarterback position it might come down to the specific team. The scheme, I think that Trevor Lawrence, the narrative around him is maybe a little bit overhyped, but I do think he's one that's the most scheme transcendent of the quarterbacks. So it might come down to just the fit of the type of offense they want to run. So it'll be interesting to see. But a new general manager, I mean, trading up for quarterback is back on the table. I don't think I would not bet on it, considering I think there are 4 in this class, and one of them is probably one that doesn't need to start this year or shouldn't start this year. Yep. So I'm not a Mac Jones or Kyle Trask guy. I'm sad. Was it last week the Kyle Trask guy was all in my calling?
Yeah, he was all, and then he threw like 3 or 4 interceptions the very next day.
Sorry, folks. Gotta have the traits.
But no, and that's, I think I was telling somebody earlier, it is the craziest top 10. Like usually we have a better idea of teams that want quarterback, that there's this is for sure a team that's going to take one. Yeah. But right now you have the Jaguars who are for sure and Cincinnati who is a for sure not. The rest of the top 10 are teams that you could see taking quarterback, but also everybody could stay pat too with what they have.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. Obviously, it's probably going to be a weird combine again. And that's where a lot of times the beginning of these deals are hammered out. I mean, the Broncos were trying to make moves to move up to 1 in the 2018 draft to go get Sam Darnold, ironically. And Baker Mayfield ended up going 1. They also tried to get up to 3. The Jets beat him there. But those were all deals that were the beginning of them were made over drinks in Indianapolis after the combine. A lot of talking heads down there and a lot of personnel decision makers.
Yeah.
Exchanging ideas, maybe laying the groundwork for some deals. But it'll be interesting. We got Dustin coming in here. Dustin, good to see you. Thank you for joining us today. I don't recognize you, but always welcome here on Building the Broncos. Would Patton be a better choice than Kelly? I think Patton would be a better choice than Kelly. I think Patton is a guy that if you get a chance to interview him, even that is saying something, considering how many teams are after him. He's somebody that is a want around the league for his brain in terms of team building. So I would say yes, but it's one of those things where we're tape guys and we're analytics guys, and there are just so many moving parts. And like, what are these guys' exact responsibilities? Unless we're in the interview room with them or like talking with them and getting to see what they're due. I mean, how much do we actually know other than the success of the team around them and how people are talking them up?
Right. So I will say this about Kelly, though. He has already had players on the team contacting John Elway in the front office, giving their, sign of approval or whatever you want to call it. He is a player's GM, which is kind of weird to say. He is a guy that relates well to players where I know with Chicago, I was reading an article, they were talking about how players would come talk to him rather than the coaching staff. Yeah. Because they felt more comfortable talking to him. Now, I do worry about that a little bit as a GM when you're making the tough decisions of who to keep, who to let go. Yeah. When they are close friends, can you let them go? That's one thing I have to say about John Elway. He didn't let friendships get in the way of business. And even that was with Kubiak at times, where Kubiak was like, no, I don't want my coaching staff gone. And Elway's like, sorry, they're gone, buddy. So it's a tough job. It's a very unlovable job. Yeah. Even when you do right, most people still hate things that you do. So, yeah, I do worry about that side of things when he is the ultimate decision maker. Can he keep the emotions out of it when he has to make those tough decisions?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to factor. So I got to ask you, who is, out of the four names we've talked about so far, the ones that have been linked the heaviest to the Broncos? Obviously, in that Rappaport's Twitter, he did not list Adam Peters in there, but we'll toss him in there because he's one that has been heavily linked to the position for the Broncos. Obviously, he was somebody that I think it was kind of a quid pro quo. The Broncos let him interview and go off to the 49ers, and in exchange, they got a stupid return on Capri Bips, who didn't even do anything for the 49ers. The Broncos got a return on an undrafted running back who had almost no play in the NFL. That was kind of a, hey, thank you very much for letting us have Adams, even though you didn't have to. Yeah. So it would be great to Adam Peters. So I think for me personally, Adam Peters is my number one. I do like what the 49ers are doing there, especially with the team building side. I really like the kind of, I wouldn't say out of the box thinking, but to go get Kinlaw and to trade Buckner to get another first round pick, to be aggressive in that kind of sense. They haven't had a quarterback obviously there that can win. I would take Drew Lock over Jimmy Garoppolo. I'd take Drew Lock maybe even over Jared Goff right now. But that says how little I think about the immobile quarterbacks in today's NFL. But who is your guy out of the four that we've talked about?
Patton is a hard one to pass up because I really loved the Vikings draft this last year. Yeah. I thought they did a masterful job of moving up and down the board and finding guys of huge value. Yeah. And it didn't show in their record this year, but they still had a lot of good young players. I think they're going to be a decent team moving forward, depending on the quarterback situation and some things. But
they had the worst defensive line in football this year. That was they had Pierce opt out, who I know a lot of people wanted the Broncos to get. I was not a big fan because he's had a lot of conditioning issues. But still, that's a team that I think it's been built pretty well. Obviously, they didn't luck into a dominant franchise quarterback. And I know people like to poop on the Case Keenum deal, but he's a competent starting quarterback, and those guys get paid. I mean, it depends on if you're willing to pay that price, but they're going to get paid. Somebody's going to be willing to do it.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Read the super chat here by Base Gates. Really appreciate it. How involved was Champ in the Trubisky trade up and Mac trade? It would be nice to be aggressive in free agency and draft for once. That is something to say about looking at the different GMs. I think if you go get Champ, there is a decent chance Broncos are going to try to trade up. He doesn't seem like a guy that's afraid of making those kind of moves. Obviously, he would have had to give not completely his stamp of approval, but I'm sure he was one of the guys that was there to say, hey, this is a good idea. Now, obviously, the Trubisky situation hasn't completely worked out. I mean, he's been up and down, not compared to the other guys in the draft for sure. But I mean, that Mac trade, that was huge for that defense, really getting them over the top to become a top tier defense. Really should have possibly been in the Super Bowl that year when Fangio was there. Just that missed field goal. Bad. Yeah.
That's the thing about defenses, man. You get one and a half season of them being at their peak.
Right.
And if you don't capitalize then, it's that's the thing. Obviously hindsight is 2020, but the Broncos, after Peyton Manning ran off, we're going to run it back with an elite defense in 2016 with Trevor Siemian. How anybody thought that was a good idea is beyond me. But, what can you do? So it is interesting. So Champ is your guy. Interesting. I do like Peters a lot. Oh, he's not.
He's not my guy. Patton was my guy.
Patton, that's right.
Yes. Champ, like I said, I like a lot of what he does, and I like the way that he goes about evaluation process, that just because a guy gets he talked about it where he said, even if a guy gets told, or the coaches tell us he is angry and he's uncoachable, I look at the guy why is he angry? Is there something more going on there to figure out? Because, if this guy's talented, can we do something to help him with these anger issues? So I like that I like that he's digging deeper into prospects rather than just saying, okay, this guy angry, he's gone. This guy, he's captain of a team, but really he's pretty darn selfish. That's what he kept talking about. And he said, I look at the personality of the player and try to figure out exactly who they are. I like that evaluation part of it.
Yeah, and I see in the chat here we have some asks about Chris Shea as well. I believe he is with the Chiefs right now, which makes me it's one of the unfortunate things about the NFL, but you have to request even to interview them. And I extremely doubt that the Chiefs would let them interview him. Now, granted, they did with David Tobe a few years ago, but I don't think they would let him interview.
They can't turn down head coaching interviews.
Yes, but general manager they can. Oh yeah, you're right.
He was going to be for head coach. They had no choice in that matter.
Yes,
and I wish, and this is such a weird business that you get offered a promotion and you can't go even interview for it.
Yeah,
there's not many other places that have that kind of setup. If you get offered a job somewhere else, you have the option to go take it. I understand they're under contract, but I don't know. It's still weird to me that they can make that kind of decision.
Yep. No, you are absolutely correct there with that. So we got another super coming in here from W.E. No period at the end of the E. I'm curious about that one. There's more to the story there. I want us to get a GM with no connection to Elway or Fangio. Sometimes the outside guy is better. Afraid Kelly and Peters will be yes men for Elway. I mean, that's always a concern. I do think that Elway would be very happy to step away, and I think the grind is starting to wear him down. I mean, people close to the organization saying his car has been in the parking spot, his parking spot less and less. He's just at the facility more. Obviously, since that sick little bug happened, he's been there even less because they're trying to not get people congregated there. But even before that, he was showing up less and less. So it's been trending this way. I do think it was a great PR move to have it happen a year earlier than people were expecting. And now he can kind of, on his own terms, walk out, and that removes a lot of the pressure for next year. And also where there's not going to be just as much blame for him. Obviously, there is some blame for John Elway, coaching issues, quarterback issues, free agent bust recently, almost the juxtaposition to his draft issues earlier. But still, I mean, it's kind of it's sad to see it happen, but it does feel like it was time, and not that surprising the more I think about it.
Yeah, I don't mind the connection because I feel like people need to understand, I guess, in some ways, the Bronco way, especially under Pat Bowlen, that it was really we win, not at all costs, but it's a very big part of this community, the fan base, ownership, everybody. And so I don't mind that side of it, that they come in understanding the pressure of what they're stepping into. And I think it probably helps also understanding the ownership situation that they're stepping into. I think you're going to scare off a lot of people who don't have a connection to the Broncos because of that. And I mean, that's whether you want to say good or bad, whichever way. We're becoming the Denver Bears. Well, coaches, any coach that comes in, they are going to go towards familiarity. But really,
they're trying to save their own job. Why would they bring in an unknown when there's somebody that's already earned the trust of that coach and the people in the organization? It just, if it's kind of like, if you're going to go down with the ship, you want to go down with guys that you trust. That way, you know, like, I was in complete control of it. There's nobody I can blame at the end of the day except myself. And
here's another thing. I think some of the worst teams out there are the ones that don't have a good connection between their GM and their coach. Yeah. Because I mean that is a big relationship, because I mean those two are pretty much responsible for the entire roster and trying to put everything together. And if you don't have those two on the same page, it leads to disaster. Like Elway and Vance Joseph, not on the same page. Yeah, I can tell you things that were happening there. It was not good. And so that was one of the nice things with Fangio and Elway. They at least were much better at communicating with each other. Didn't always see eye to eye, and Russell sometimes got in the way of some of those things. So he's gone too. We'll see how they replace that position as well, because that's kind of an underrated thing. I mean, Elway's the headline news, but there is a secondary article there.
Yeah, I mean, it's top down, right? So you have ownership first, completely unstable. That's a question, and that has a big effect on what a general manager can do. And I mean, without an ownership stable there, especially without one with deep pockets, but without one even existing at all, there's limitations for what teams can do as far as paying contracts, the facilities. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that having a lack of ownership means that guys are not going to be empowered to do the best that they can. And that's an issue with the Broncos, and it will be until it's not. So it's much more of a big picture issue. But again, it's something that as a general manager, that could be enough of a deterrent that would scare me off of the Broncos job. I'm going to a team that is their main income is actual football operations rather than, teams with oil money or bank money or et cetera, et cetera. So you are limited. You're already behind the cap, so to speak, not the salary cap, but the actual finances. And then you have questions with the head coach now. I mean, obviously we think Vic Fangio is going to come back. That has been all the talk so far. It sounds like he's going to have a hat in the ring in the hire, but make no mistake, Vic Fangio's seat got hotter with this as well. And his future for 2021 became a little bit more uncertain. I would say he is back, but there's definitely some uncertainty there. And then the biggest thing has to be the concerns, or not concerns, but the instability of Drew Lock going forward at quarterback. I know it's a very much a polar issue right now. It's probably going to become, it's already toxic out there on social media. Either you think he's the best of all time or he sucks. There's no in between. Most people, I think, are in the middle telling everybody else to shut up. But that's just kind of how social media amplifies voices. So quarterback is the one that I am. Before I was pretty confident Broncos were going to give Lock another year. It's no secret. The biggest supporter of Drew Lock in that entire facility has been John Elway, and it will still continue to be John Elway. He's not stepping away completely. But now with a new general manager, I mean, I don't want to read too much into tone, but yesterday with Drew Lock's interview, it was like, I think he knew that his main supporter in there was going away, and the tether is cut. It's on him now. There's nobody to run back to. So, and he played better down the stretch. He still has competent tools. Like, he could be a franchise quarterback, but just that uncertainty for 2021, losing your number one proponent in the organization. I mean, there's instability there at the very least.
Yep. All right.
We got Albert Knoppers coming in. Albert, I love the Broncos snuggie there.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
And then we got Cody Potter. Yes, with the super chat. I love this. As long as we don't draft Iowa players, we should be straight. I will say an Iowa player as a rookie ended up as a second team All-Pro so far, or at least, well, okay, I guess they haven't released the All-Pro teams, but on like PFF's All-Pro team, others, I know Brandon Thorne, I think, had him as an All-Pro on his list. There's a reason
he was my number 3 overall prospect last year.
Yep. So there's some decent Iowa plays out there every once in a while. Yeah. But the real question is, why let Simmons go if no great free agent or draft pick to replace him? Well, that's a great question. I mean, you were just talking about it. Unfortunately, with the instability with ownership, they are limited on their cash that they can produce. And so that limits how they can design a contract. The guaranteed money is where you really have the hang up. They can get a long contract, but if they don't have the guaranteed money that they have to set aside, that's the way the NFL works. If you say you have $60 million in guarantees, and yes, it might only come out over the next 3 years, you still have to set aside $60 million day one that the ink is dried on that contract.
So that signing bonus has to be able to put into escrow. Yep.
Right. And right now, the Broncos just don't have that cash to make that happen. That was part of last year trying to get a deal done with Simmons. Like, they could make it long enough, they can make it high enough overall in value. They just couldn't get the guaranteed money right with him. And so I worry about that again this year even more, that they don't have the ownership figured out. They're going to be a little bit more tighter with their cap. I hope they get something done with Simmons, because you're right. They don't really have a quality option available to replace him. They might have to take a risk on a rookie. And there's not many great free agents out there that are going to even give you 80% of what Simmons brings to the field.
With that said, I do have pretty good confidence in Vic Fangio being able to find a competent safety to come in and play immediately. Obviously, you're going to take a step back, but you could maybe get 60% of the production for 50% of the contract with another guy come in. And Justin Simmons, while he is really good, is he the best safety in the NFL? That's a question. That is a good question. Obviously, he's one of the best people in the NFL, but is he one of the best safeties? And is he going to get paid that big money? I mean, we've seen it year after year in Vic Fangio schemes. He's finding safeties late. He converting cornerbacks to safety, and they come in and boom, they're difference makers. So yeah, there's a conversation to be had about, while Justin Simmons is a no doubt guy that you can bring back if you had that cash, maybe you can pinch a few pennies and live with a minor step back, but saving a lot more cash going with somebody else. And also safety is it's not a premium position. It's not a position that the Broncos historically have been willing to pay big money to. It's not the offensive tackle. It's not the edge rusher. It's not the quarterback. It's not the cornerback. Those are the four main building block positions where not only you want to sink in premium draft resources in, but you want to pay those guys big contracts because if they're good, even an average one is going to get incredible money. And that's not the case with safety. So we'll see what happens. Personally, if I was the Broncos, I would probably be slapping the franchise tag on Simmons again, but I'm not sure they would do that to him. And I'm not sure if Simmons would play on the tag again. I think based on reading his tone, I think he might sit out if he got tagged again. I think he's ready for that deal. He went through this year with the tag, and obviously he'd make great money, all guaranteed on that tag, but it's more about the long-term stability at that point.
All right, Paul coming in here. Doesn't a new GM also increase stockpiling future draft assets if 21 is a free pass? Well, let me put it this way then, Paul. Let's say a new GM coming in knowing the Broncos are probably going to sell the team in 2022. There is a good chance of that, it seems like, especially when they're not bringing Brittany Bolin in on these interviews, which is kind of interesting. But if you have 1 year to prove that you can do something and build a playoff caliber team, maybe you go ahead and go all in on something. If you believe like a Zach Wilson gets you over the top and you can go ahead and trade all those assets and then you go make the playoffs, then that shows that new ownership, hey, this is a guy that's worth keeping because, hey, look, I went and found your quarterback for you.
Yeah, and that's never a bad thing. I know people are like, well, the Broncos wouldn't look quarterback this year because despite them getting a new general manager, they still had Vic Fangio. Didn't keep the Chargers from going after Justin Herbert. Didn't keep the Browns from going after Baker Mayfield. It's more about the opportunity of if there's a guy there you love, you have to at least look at it. And it still could be Drew Lock as well. It's not time to totally dump him yet. Obviously, he played better down the stretch. Now, granted, if you stratify that based on the caliber of defenses he played, those numbers are not as good because he played absolute trash defenses down the stretch, kind of like last year as well, and put up decent numbers and really struggled against better defenses. But still, you saw improvement in the play, in the tape, and he still has a pretty good arm, probably top 12 arm. I haven't gone through and answered every single one, but I'd say as far as pure arm talent, top 12. And he has enough athleticism to get it. It's more of the mechanical side of things, the mental side of things that need to take multiple steps forward for him to be a top 20 level quarterback, which he's not right now.
Right. I would still give Drew Lock maybe 25, 30% chance that he's the starter week 1 of 2021.
Oh, I'd go higher than that.
Go higher than that? Okay.
I think Vegas would go higher than that just because he's already here. That's a safer bet rather than unless you're going pure field. Like if you're combining 70% for the field and 30% for Lock, but I think it will probably be Lock week 1. And he's still, he saw improvement down the stretch. He's going to be 25 next year. And also he's dirt cheap. He's dirt cheap. We're talking about the Broncos having issues with cap. He's one of the cheapest quarterbacks in the NFL. So got that going for him as well.
Right. Well, if they do keep Drew Lock, and we get to this question by Kenneth Booker. Thank you for the super chat once again. Who do you most want to be there at 9? Well, Trevor Lawrence, but that's not happening. Realistically, I know you have your love for Caleb Farley.
Yep.
Micah Parsons is another option that I would definitely love to see. The more I watch him, the more I understand. Just that athleticism, it pops. There's no getting around it. The guy is flying everywhere. He's hitting people. He's making plays. And while he's not a finished product, the fact that he can do all that while not being a finished product just shows how high his ceiling can be.
I just have such a hard time with the top of this draft class this year because the guys that for the most part played this year do not have the athletic profiles of top 10 picks. I saw people talking about Surtain in here, and if Surtain runs a sub 4.5 40, I'd be pretty shocked. He does not move like a guy who runs a 4.45 or shorter, which you need in the AFC West. This is a track star division, and you're putting out a 4.5 cornerback out there on the boundary with Michael Ojemudia, who's already boundary bound on the outside. It's a recipe for disaster. In the top 10 at least, that's not a top 10 cornerback in any class. You're looking for the Denzel Woods of the world. You're looking for the Marshawn Lattimore. You're looking for the Jalen Ramseys. Not close. Not close. So that was one that concerns me a little bit. Obviously, he has the name. People love the pedigree, not only with the name, but also Alabama. But Caleb Farley to me is the one that has the most athletic upside to be a great cornerback. Also, I think he has versatility to play inside and outside, which with Michael Ojemudia being boundary bound, given I would say the tightness in his hips, have the ability to have your number one cornerback be able to go inside and outside in this scheme, I think is very, very valuable. But it's just such a weird year this year. I mean, every single top player, pretty much the non-quarterback wise, didn't play this year. You have Penei Sewell, didn't play. Rashawn Slater, who the Broncos should probably not look at because he's probably going to go to the interior, but a lot of people in the NFL have Rashawn Slater over Penei Sewell. I know, shocker everybody, because how much Penei Sewell has been hyped. But Rashawn Slater's right up there, didn't play this year. Gregory Rousseau from Miami, didn't play this year. Caleb Farley, didn't play this year. Chase, LSU wide receiver, didn't play this year. And Micah Parsons didn't play this year. So all these guys who are these athletic profiles for top 10 picks didn't play. And obviously you have to go on the tape that's available, but then you have this case study of Ohio State cornerback, who's slipping my name right now. The one
Shaun Wade or what?
Yes, Shaun Wade. Yes, Shaun Wade, who many people thought, easy, top 10, top 15 pick this year. He's going to transfer to the outside, but he's got the tools to do it. He'll be fine there. I was a big fan of him too. I thought, slot boundary safety ability, that's from what we saw last year. Great. Comes back this year, does not play well on the boundary. He's probably going to be a slot in the NFL. Does not play well. So those are guys you have questions about that because you lacked that tape. You're projecting that year of growth, which growth is not linear. So does Rousseau take another step? Does Parsons take another step, who has a lot of issues processing? Caleb Farley, does he get better with his tackling? I mean, he's a wide receiver convert. So it's just a really scary year. Outside of the quarterbacks in the top 10, it's a scary year. And I don't think that people are like, you're going to get a blue chip player at 9. I'm not positive. I do not love the non-quarterbacks in the top 10 this year.
Yeah.
Had to get that off my chest.
All right. Cody Potter coming in here with a great super chat. Really appreciate it. Got the super chat to match his jersey and hat. Like it. Just kidding on the Iowa players. Haha. Did you see Bowles call out Juwan James the other day, saying he needs to earn the respect of the locker room back? Could Bowles be the leader this team has craved, in my opinion, for years since D. Ware?
I mean, they've had great leadership on the defensive side of the ball overall. I mean, Justin Simmons is probably as well-spoken and intelligent and everything you want as a leader. I mean, when Justin Simmons eventually runs for office, I'll move to the state to vote for him. That kind of guy. Yeah. I'll follow you. But Bowles, as far as the offensive side, and it's kind of weird because typically from the years dating back to, the offensive line coach's name is escaping me, Gibbs. When he was there, the offensive line took pretty much an oath of silence against the media and would not talk to them. And that's kind of changed in recent years, especially since Ronald Leary left, because he would give everybody dirty looks if they started talking to the media, the offensive linemen. But Bowles, I like that what he has to say. I'm not sure how involved James is with the team right now. Now, granted, he had every right to take that sick bug, as we'll call it, opt out. But I mean, still, you can be emotionally invested with not just the team, but your teammates. And that, reading between the lines, that has not been the case. He has been at best aloof.
Right.
And that means they don't trust him. I mean, they don't trust him. They'll have to see it. So I don't fault James at all, but I also think that the guys in the locker room have every right to feel that way. He's not been.
And I do wonder a little bit if it's more even last season compared to this season that are causing problems, because you had team doctors that were kind of saying, I think his knee's okay. Juwan James saying, my knee's not okay. I don't want to play. And coaches and other players, I think there was just a lot of disconnect that first season. And then you opt out right before because he waited as long as possible to opt out and kind of put the Broncos in this weird position of having to figure out what they're going to do at the right tackle spot. And, really, I think if there is any position group that it is about the unity of the group, it is the offensive line. Those guys being knowing each other well. And so him not being there, like you said, in the facility, not really doing a whole lot with the team. I mean, you look at Von Miller this year. He's been out, but he's been with the team.
Yeah.
He's been trying to be on the practice field, even though he can't run. And so that's I think the difference that you're seeing in those two kind of personalities. And Garrett Bowles recognizes that. He recognizes that they are a unit. And if that trust is broken, if he hasn't been communicating with them, let's say I'm guessing they have a group chat, and I'm sure Juwan James has been put on that. And I can't speak for how often he's been communicating with him or not, but from the sound of things, it just doesn't sound like there's much relationship there.
Hashtag aloof.
Yeah.
We got Corey coming in here watching Ellis tonight. It sounds like everyone is looking to win starting now. That sounds like a FA quarterback spot to me. I mean, the question then becomes what free agent quarterback is going to move the needle enough to do that, and at what cost, right? So like what free agent quarterbacks are available? The Broncos are not in the top 5 odds for Matt Stafford. I think probably that ship sailed once they had an earlier pick. I would not trade 9 overall, but a team like the Washington football team or the Indianapolis Colts, I think those are some of the highest teams, or a team that is bringing a lot of guys back next year off of the illness reserve, like the Patriots. I think those are some of the top teams in the Matt Stafford market. So, I mean, they might go free agent quarterback, but you're talking about like a Tyrod Taylor or Andy Dalton there. And while that does really raise the floor of the team, what you need given Drew Lock's, I guess we'll call it durability concerns that are starting to mount. I mean, 2 years missing multiple games in injuries that are affecting his ability to play quarterback. So, I mean, that does raise the floor, but I mean, it's very lukewarm. You know, it's like getting a room temperature glass of milk. It's like, I mean, there's some sustenance there, but I'm not going to enjoy myself.
Right. And I'm having a tough time figuring out how the Eagles move Carson Wentz with his contract and how he's been playing. That is going to be a really tough one. They're almost going to have to give up like a 2nd round pick and Carson Wentz for like a 7th round pick and take on some of the contract itself, especially with the cap going down this year. If it was a normal year where cap is kind of going up, it'd be much easier to move a guy like Carson Wentz where a team feels like, hey, maybe we can make this guy a reconciliation project and turn him into something. But right now, I have a tough time seeing a team willing to take that chance. Maybe the Colts, just because of their coaching staff,
with the history
having worked with him. But so there's another one that's kind of out of the picture there. Sam Darnold, if the Jets decide to move on from him, I mean, we've already talked about we wouldn't mind him. But like you said, are we moving the needle? Sam Darnold didn't play great this year. Yeah, he didn't have a whole lot of talent around him. But it's hard to sit here and say that he is an absolute upgrade over Drew Lock. I can't say that.
Yeah. I think you're probably not moving the needle that much. It does I think Darnold, unlike some of those other guys, the Andy Daltons, the Tyrod Taylor, does raise the ceiling and the floor, which is kind of what you want with a quarterback like that, but still worth a 2nd round pick. I don't know. And actually I want to get to this one real quick. Cody Potter, Marlon Humphreys isn't fast either, though he was a top 5 quarterback. Marlon Humphrey was a junior Olympian and went and competed in that as a hurdler and ran a sub 4.45 40 with equal or better size than Surtain. So I would contest against that. I mean, the dude was an Olympic track athlete. So the more you know. But yeah, no, it'll be really interesting when it happens. What are your thoughts on, so now we have a quarterback here. What are your thoughts on the potential of the Broncos potentially moving up for a quarterback? Obviously the question first comes to, we know the Jags are going quarterback. It's probably going to be Trevor Lawrence. If Urban Meyer gets hired there or Ryan Day, that maybe changes things, but you'd think they would just flip, right? They would just flip with the Jets and the Jets would send them another 2 or something to move up one spot in that case. But still, I think the question starts with the Jets. Are they going to stick with Darnold? Are they going to trade down? They obviously have another 1st round pick this year from the Seahawks in the Jamal Adams trade. So that's the first moving block. Then it's the Dolphins. And given how Tua has looked this year, I know he's coming off a hip injury, but man, it is horrible. Like their offensive line is bad. Their weapons are not great. Tua looks like Case Keenum out there with less mobility. So like, I would not rule them out in the quarterback thing. After the Josh Rosen thing where they were 120% right in doing what they did, you can't rule it out.
I wouldn't rule it out. I did read an article today by probably one of the most respected media people, in my opinion, Cameron Wolfe.
Love him.
He is so good at what he does. He kind of talked about, he was just trying to read between the lines of players and coaches and what they're kind of saying here to end the season. And he made it sound like he's pretty sure they're going to give him another year. But yeah, I mean, things change. It's early. Yeah, it's early. They're obviously trying not to give up value if they are there at number 3 of, hey, we're definitely not taking quarterback. It's kind of like the 49ers a few years ago when they traded back with the Bears. They were like, hey, we'll take your guy. We might take quarterback. And so then they were like, oh, we got to get up there. We promise we'll trade you this. And now it didn't quite work out because they took your boy Solomon Thomas, but that's okay. He didn't quite work out.
Sometimes you miss, but that's okay.
I know. That was, yeah. We all were big believers in him, so I can't say it was just you.
I mean, he went 3 overall, so people much smarter than me making decisions thought something of him.
Yeah,
but it will be interesting to see what happens. Do you have a quarterback ranking right now? I'm just curious where you sit and how would you rank these guys in terms of their prospects coming out versus Drew Lock's prospects coming out. Not today, not where he was, not today, but where Drew Lock was as a prospect coming out.
Okay, so obviously Trevor Lawrence is at the top.
Yes.
You're going to have a hard time finding anybody that is going to disagree with that. I mean, of course, John is. but that's John. No, he's obviously at the top. Looks like a generational talent, guy that you build an entire franchise around. Some of Sasha Khan's comments about him like running the team instead of a general manager make me go, oh man, he's going to a terrible situation. So we'll see how that plays out. But no, he'd be at the top.
Colorado fans got to be excited. Laviska Shenault stock way up with the quarterback coming in there. And I mean, that's a fun offense. I got work to do on the offensive line. Defense is a mess. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Justin Simmons was wearing that ugly tealish green and black next year because he's from that area and they had money to spend. But okay, so you have Trevor Lawrence 1. No, the real conversation starts 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Okay, so I have Zach Wilson number 2.
Okay.
I really like his game, and part of it is I'm always thinking of these guys in terms of how they would look with the Broncos. I think Wilson is the best fit with Shermer of the quarterbacks not named Trevor Lawrence. He gets the ball out quick. He's got that quick release. He does a great job spreading the ball around. It's not that he gets locked in on one guy. I thought that was part of Drew Lock's problem this year. Was there's times where he tried to force feed the ball to guys and it was not working well. When he was at his best, it was when he was spreading the ball around, finding obviously the open guy. That's the best way to go. So I like that about Zach Wilson. I like that he has some athleticism. I like that he's creative. That's another thing that I think you're really starting to see be a big part of the NFL today. Guys that can be creative in how they manipulate defenses and how they manipulate pockets, all those kind of things. Zach Wilson brings that to the table. So, yes, I think he is one of the better at that. I think he might even be better than Trevor Lawrence at that part of the game.
Yeah. Okay. Number 3.
I'll go Justin Fields. He hasn't looked
hesitated there.
What?
You hesitated.
I did because he hasn't had the best season.
It's still been pretty damn good. I think people are overrating how good Northwestern Indiana's defenses were this year.
I'm not disagreeing. I just think you've seen some of the limitations to his game. Some of the questions I had from 2019 coming into this year are still some questions that I have. One of them being there were times in games, especially big games, where he would do the one read and then really start to scramble around or just take off. And I mean, it works like Lamar Jackson does that some. So he's obviously, Tannehill's done that some. So I'm not saying it can't work in the NFL. I'm just saying I want to see a little bit more growth in some of those areas of getting through his reads, finding the open guy, and making some plays. He looked great in this last game. His best game of his career by far, just outstanding. Finding the open guy, fitting balls in tight windows, especially when you took away his running ability because of that hit, and the guy goes out there and still keeps just throwing that football around. That was gutsy. That's something that I love to watch. So he'd be my number 3. And then I'm going to have to go – I would go Trey Lance 4.
You were going to scare me there for a second. I would agree with you. There's just something to be said about everybody wants to like nitpick and all these like actual quarterback specific things. But if we're learning anything over the last 4 drafts, the tools matter at the quarterback position. And It really matters for the developmental curve. You have a guy like Josh Rosen coming in and, he's brilliant. He's got all this, he understands the game so well. Comes into the NFL and is probably one of the least football intelligent guys on the team day one. and he doesn't have the traits to have that learning curve time to live off the traits. So I am completely out on quarterbacks that lack athleticism and arm talent. I mean, you got to have a little bit of both. And so you obviously Trey Lance, number 4, he's my number 4 as well. The most upside of any in this class, but probably the biggest boom or bust. I know he had 1 year of tape that makes him a huge risk. But if he comes in and blows people away in the whiteboard and the interview and the throwing session after only playing 1 weird game, like an exhibition game this year, people shouldn't freak out, because that means that he came in and absolutely killed the pre-draft process, kind of like Patrick Mahomes did. People were saying very similar, obviously there's more tape with Patrick Mahomes, but how could you take a quarterback that couldn't finish above 500 in the Big 12? You know, that kind of thing. It's like the tools are there and the football character's there. You put the rest in bed.
Right. So, and one I saw that earlier of Zach Wilson, played against trash teams. Well, he destroyed trash teams too. He did what he was supposed to do.
So did Josh Allen play trash teams. Yeah.
And he didn't destroy them. And look at him in the NFL now. He's top 5 quarterback right now. So, but yeah, Trey Lance, those, like you said, and I've read some things about him just mentally and his processing and the work that he puts in that have me excited about his prospects of actually turning those tools into a true football player. And then
that's something that makes me interested too about this quarterback conversation. It's because when has Vic Fangio had the most success as a defensive coordinator? He's had a simplified offense with a super athletic quarterback that takes care of the ball and moves the chains with athleticism. And that was Mitch Trubisky. They went 13-3 with a great defense, no doubt, but Mitch Trubisky had a solid year that year, and they were not asking him to reinvent the wheel. It was a lot of split zone reads and using that quarterback athleticism to move the ball and control the ball. And then also the Colin Kaepernick season where they went all the way to the Super Bowl. The lights went out. It probably should have been the Broncos versus the 49ers. Gosh darn it, Raheem Moore. But still, I mean, there's something to be said about that. So
Nick,
I don't know.
You're not supposed to cuss on here.
Gosh darn.
No, I meant Raheem Moore.
Oh, well, excuse me. It'll be interesting. I mean, it's just very much more on the table. We're going to have this conversation. I'll need to go back and rewatch the Drew Lock games in sequential order, probably at some point, just to kind of get an idea of the progress he made and how much of his success down the stretch was he was playing some of the worst pass defenses in football versus his success. I mean, it's probably the truth lies in the middle, but still you have to compare that versus the cost of going up to get a quarterback in this class. And I don't know what the right answer is. I think anybody who would tell you definitively one way or the other is probably biased, especially at this point in the process. But at the very least, it's on the table.
Right. But then, Drew Lock would be number 5 on my if we're comparing when they came out of college, their tape and what they showed, Drew Lock would be number 5.
Over Mac Jones?
Yes, because he has a little bit more athleticism and a little bit more tools. Yes. So we're talking about being tools guys. He would be number 5 of this quarterback class for me.
Yeah, it's really that. It can't just be tools because Paxton Lynch had tools, but it's A plus B, where A is the arm talent and the athleticism, and B is that football character. How bad do they want it? They have to have that like Kobe Bryant level of obsession with being great to be a quarterback. People are like, oh, why aren't you patient for Drew Lock like you were Garrett Bowles? Quarterback is an entire different conversation. It's almost it's a different position. Yeah, or they're playing like a different sport. So I don't know. You just have to. I personally think you have to frame the quarterback one differently. We got John. Go ahead. Yeah,
I wanted to get to this from Joseph Malinowski. Hopefully I said that right. Everyone's looking for the next Patrick Mahomes, and that's hard to come by. Well, yeah, that is. You're right. That's why we need better defensive quarters, linebackers, and safeties to stop him. To a point, I would say the Broncos maybe played the Chiefs better than anybody this year, and because the offense couldn't put points up, they couldn't win the games. So there's still something there if you need to be able to still score. Those great offenses are eventually going to break through. The 49ers last year had an amazing defense. And in that Super Bowl, they held the Chiefs down for so long. But because the 49ers couldn't just kind of put their foot down on the offensive side of the ball and just put the Chiefs out of their misery, you let the Chiefs hang around, they're going to find a way. And so,
good point. I was going to say, this is the thing about team building at this point, and this is building the Broncos. So we're getting really down to the draft and team building philosophy, which a general manager episode, we can kind of we'll lean this way. This is definitely off season more, but it really does seem more and more in today's NFL, while great defenses will get you to the playoffs, it takes a substantial amount of luck, whether it be the ball bouncing your way or injuries. I mean, that's probably the biggest one, guys staying healthy, in order to get to a Super Bowl with a great defense, it's a flash in the pan. It's a blip. And if you don't capitalize on that singular season, you're back down to mediocrity or worse. We saw the Broncos capitalize in 2015 on that great defense. Good for them.
Right.
49ers were in the gosh darn Super Bowl last year. Now they're picking 12, right? So it's that defense. It fluctuates so much year to year. Right. So really, I think the plan should be, it's much like the offensive line, where having the top 5 offensive line is great. Having a top 5 defense is great. They just need to be that point where it's a binary. Are they good enough and not killing you? And once you have that, then there's some room there. Same with the offensive line. But you do need a top 10, top 5 offense. And unfortunately, a lot of times that is tied directly to the quarterback. But still, that's how you succeed. And the best way to make the playoffs. Playoffs is a crapshoot. I'll tell you that. Anybody will tell you that. Knock on the door repeatedly. And that's how you get in. That's how you win.
Yeah. And I would add a little bit just here of with that quarterback, you're always looking for the next Patrick Mahomes, but there's a reason there's only one Patrick Mahomes. I'm hoping if we could find a Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, those kind of guys that, like I said, they have athleticism, they have tools, they've shown some huge promise. Yeah, they've had a few bad games here and there, but have really shown that they can carry the team different times throughout the season. You find that kind of guy. Even Baker Mayfield has shown some of that a little bit this year. Lamar Jackson has obviously shown it with Baltimore. Just needs something, a little spark from your quarterback that gives you confidence as a team. I mean, it's amazing how much that then trickles down into the rest of the team. I'm not sure how much all the players believe in Drew Lock being that guy that when they need a play, Drew Lock's going to be there to make it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely see what happens there with the quarterback situation. Right now, I would say that Drew Lock is the odds-on favorite. He has a lot of stuff going for him right now. Specifically, he is one of the cheapest quarterbacks in the NFL, and he is improving. And they also have a very good offense around him. So if they wanted to run it back with Drew Lock next year, that's a conversation to be had. If they wanted to trade back and accumulate picks for 2022, that is a conversation to have as well. And I like Trey Lance. I mean, I don't know if I want Trey Lance, but I think, and this may be an overreaction, but in 2017, I saw Josh Allen's traits and I was like, whoa, this guy is special. In fact, I made sure to get front row seats for Josh Allen coming to the University of Iowa to play the Hawkeyes that year because I had to see it, and then 2018, he struggled. He was not good turning the ball over. And then I was like, okay, Paxton Lynch failed this toolsy guy, not accurate, blah, blah, blah. I'm not in on Josh Allen. I don't trust it. Yeah. And now you have Josh Allen killing it. I mean, he's the best quarterback in the NFL, the hottest quarterback in the NFL right now.
Right. And I was down at the Senior Bowl watching Josh Allen, and they cleared out media in the end zones because he was launching it over people's heads and throwing it so hard he was about hurting people. And so I saw the lack of accuracy, and I was going, man, you got to be better than that in the NFL. There's no way that kind of arm, even though he can fit it into some tight windows, he's going to make some wow throws. That's not consistent enough for the NFL. Well, you see the development. You see how the coaching staff really poured into this kid, developed the entire offense around him, got the playmakers around him, got everything, and it's worked out for them. I mean, that's the risk you take. But it's paid off for them, and if the Broncos do it, it might be the risk worth taking for them too.
Yeah, no, that's if they fall in love with a guy, everything should be on the table. Because Drew Lock, while he's shown the ability to be, I think, competent, and he's not going to absolutely kill you. It's not like Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch or even Brock Osweiler. I think you're doing better than that. Maybe an Andy Dalton level quarterback, but Andy Dalton on a rookie contract. I mean, that can get you to the playoffs pretty easily. But it's going to be a guy that's going to take you to the promised land. That's a question the Broncos are going to have to ask. And also I see Zane here, new wide receiver coach, seen some videos showing some serious lack of effort in the scramble drill. Zach Kazani is one of the best in the league at the wide receiver coach position. I would question the video. Obviously you can pick out videos and you can say this guy did not do what he was supposed to do here and there. And that can be that's an issue, I think, of the player. But as far as Zach Kazani goes, he's safe. I mean, outside of Bill Kolar, I can't think of a positional coach that I trust as much as Zach Azzanni. I mean, look what he did with Tim Patrick this year. Look what he's done with like Cortland Sutton. I mean, I'm really excited for Hamler and Judy next year. Zach Azzanni is a dude.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. Tim Patrick going from undrafted to guy that a lot of teams are keeping an eye on of what the Broncos do with him this offseason. You might even see some teams, if they slap that second round tag on him, you might see some teams take a chance on that because of the talent that he has shown and the growth. I mean, you and I have talked about it. Cortland Sutton, I didn't like him coming out because he was so raw.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had all the tools and things like that, but you see the development that he's made. That's Azzanni. That's him working with that kid like crazy. Same with Tim Patrick. You're seeing a guy that used to just be a go route or a comeback route. That's all he did when he was first in the league. Now that guy is going all over the field, becoming a number one target, most trusted wide receiver on the field this season. So, yeah, you're right. I can't wait to see what he does with Judy and Hamler next season. he's got some weapons to work with now.
Yep. And before we get out of here, I do want to answer this one. You guys aren't giving Locke enough of a chance. Josh Allen struggled for 2 years with worse numbers than Locke before turning it around. Be patient and give him some time. To me, I'm a data guy. I know analytics, blah, blah, blah. But that's like saying, you took a quarterback in the 6th round and then you point to Tom Brady. You're talking about a anomaly. And if you want to, your paycheck or your ability to feed your family to depend on a statistical anomaly, that's kind of like going and depending on a scratch ticket to feed your family that night. It's just, it could happen. Sure. But just following the data, letting analytics guide your decision, it feels like that probably won't happen. And I know that also Drew Lock is not Josh Allen. If you're going to talk about Josh Allen, you need to talk about the weapons around them. If you go back to Josh Allen's rookie season and the Bills offense and compare it to what the Broncos have, it's like the difference between a Ford Pinto and a Maserati. I know the Broncos offense is young, but they have a top 10 offensive line right now that is pushing the right direction where they've invested heavily in. They have probably the best set of young wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs in football. I can't think of one that has better set. It comes down to that quarterback. Where you look back at that Josh Allen team in 2018, it's Deion Dawkins and a bunch of just absolutely guys that aren't in the league anymore are starting. It's just not the same situation. On top of Josh Allen having the best tools in football while being the best red zone weapon. So right. I really don't like that comparison. I appreciate the comment, Tim French, but it's not one for one, and I think it's a lazy analysis.
Right. No, you're right. The athletic profile of Josh Allen is so much more than what Drew Lock has brought to the table. His running ability, I mean, like I said, red zone threat. He doesn't have to be the most accurate quarterback in the NFL because he's such a great red zone threat. He's Cam Newton, one of the worst red zone quarterbacks in football. Do what?
Drew Lock has been one of the worst red zone quarterbacks in football.
Yes. And so, yeah, you got to look at the full picture of everything that's going on. I'm not saying that I'm giving up on Lock. Like I said, that there are tools there. I'm just saying with everything on the table right now, they need to obviously look very hard at this quarterback class and decide, is that worth it? The veterans that are out there, is it worth it? Because this is actually a pretty good roster that the Broncos have here. Offensively, okay. Defensively, there's some questions, and they're getting a little old, getting a little long in the tooth, and have a few positions that they need to figure out, obviously. But offensively, yes, there are a lot of pieces in place that can make this offense a top 10 offense if you get a competent quarterback in place. And, yeah, so they need to figure that out because otherwise they're going to be right back here having the same conversation next year. And I'm not one that thinks the 2022 class at quarterback is looking as good as this one.
Me neither. I mean, Sam Howell, limited tools, limited athleticism. He kind of reminds me of Baker Mayfield, but I just don't see him as that obvious slam dunk number one pick. Spencer Rattler, I love the tools. Apparently he is like one of the bigger jerks in football, like, doesn't have friends kind of thing. So that's something to monitor. And I think it was Dane Brugler, who I can't think of any draft analysts I respect more than Dane Brugler, not only for his own analysis, but his connection and sources in the league. He said that right now the league thinks that Keaton Slovis is the number one quarterback for 2022. And guys, Keaton Slovis certifiably not it, at least for like a top 10 pick at quarterback. So if you're not going on quarterback this year, then punt next year too and wait for DJ Ugalavala or whatever his name is at Clemson. Because, next year, obviously somebody can emerge just like Joe Burrow last year, just like Zach Wilson this year. But right now they just don't stack up. So I don't see why you would do that. I mean, especially considering how much you're probably gonna have to pay to move back up into quarterback range when you're already there this year. So I don't know. We got PFF coming in here. Worst center in football, and then right tackle not so good. Top 10 offensive line. Well, down the stretch they were pretty darn good. Granted, bad defenses, but they're trending the right way for sure. And they were really young. And also, if you look at Lloyd Cushenberry's ability from the beginning of the year, where he was dreadful, he was one of the worst center in football for sure. Compared to down the year, much better.
Yep. I agree.
So we'll see what happens. Oh, Carson Strong is another one for next year as well. He's such a pocket quarterback. I have a hard time with pure pocket quarterbacks these days. They have to have such a perfect offensive. I mean, essentially his best case is Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan is completely dependent on how good his offensive line is year in and year out. So I don't know. It's we'll see what happens. I still think Drew Lock can be a franchise quarterback. I really do, guys. It's just you have to ask those tough questions, and the Broncos are going to be bringing a new general manager to answer those tough questions. And luckily, we get to sit here and critique all of them along with you guys, and then we can say what we would have done differently. I will tell you what, if the Broncos sit pat and Drew Lock fails and one of the quarterbacks, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, becomes a dude, I'll be insufferable because they missed out. But, it is what it is. Hindsight by it as always. But that's going to do it for Building the Broncos. We did go over today, guys. So all the people saying, oh, Nick's got to go take care of his dog. I do have to go take care of my dog. But we did go over for you guys because it's the first official offseason pod for us at Building the Broncos, and it's draft season. Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock, but soon to be the Denver Broncos, picking at 9 for now. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH. Also find myself on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, guys, make sure you follow Buwana Beast. Sometimes I tease him. He took his camera off. He knows I'm about to put him up on screen sometimes. Follow Buwana at John K MHH. We couldn't do this without him. We really do appreciate him. Make sure you give him a follow. He's talking about earlier how Nick, I don't have the reach that you have on Twitter, Nick. Well, let's fix that. Follow Buwana as well. Guys, also make sure you're going over to milehighhuddle.com for all of our written content and the MHH community content. I do think it's going to be a little bit of a quiet offseason for the Broncos as it pertains to other teams' free agents, but obviously Justin Simmons, Shelby Harris, young guys balling out last week that we should be excited about. I mean, Malik Reed had a good close to the season, good season. Draymond Jones, oh my gosh, Draymond Jones was so good. Michael Ojemudia, that's really exciting. Going over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. On YouTube, like, subscribe, and share. And Facebook, click those thumbs up. Doing that is probably the number one thing you can do to help us with these shows. And that helps not only us, it helps the Huddle Up podcast with Zach and Chad. It helps the Mile High Insiders with myself and Luke. And always also the Dove Valley Deep Divers with Lance and Eric. We're here 7 days a week. I can't think of any other Broncos platform or audio platform that provides you the comprehensive coverage every single day. Also, guys with completely different tones. I listen to Chad and Zach, and they have different opinions than Carl and I do, and Carl and I have different opinions than Lance and Eric do. So there's something for everybody out there. And above everything else, I don't think you're going to get down into a Denver Broncos echo chamber, which if you are some other places, sometimes that can be a little bit of a case. Not just Denver Broncos specific, but just in general. Also, guys, follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. Carl, you got any plans the rest of the night? What's going on out in the great state of Kansas? I'd assume I've never been.
I've got a date with a rowing machine.
Oh, well,
I got a race here in March in Las Vegas, so I gotta get myself in shape.
Well, there you go. Me, I think I'm gonna cook dinner and hang out with the pup, and take it easy because today was a busy day. So appreciate you guys. As always, go Broncos and stay safe. I mean, number one thing, stay safe. Let's live to fight another day, right? See y'all next week.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.